Welcome to a Cofi with the FinTech Pod. We'll explore the latest trends, innovations, and ideas shaping the financial industry. Join host Alex Irigoyen as he interviews leading experts in the field. Learn from top CFO, tech leaders, investors, and many more. Join us and get inspired. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Coffee With. Today, we have with us Andrew Potselueff. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's not every day I get to do a podcast, so thanks for having me.
How has been the week so far? A lot of work going on.
Yeah, actually, I'm in downtown San Francisco today. It's a nice mid-60s weather, and was just hanging out at a conference with other finance professionals, which don't get to do as much as I'd like to, but it's been a good day so far. How about you?
It's been so far so good. It's a little bit warmer here in Austin. Didn't have the opportunity to move from the office, but I can't complain.
I saw that you posted your sister got married. Congratulations. How was that?
Appreciate it. Yeah, it was so good. Yeah, we were in France, so we had from Thursday all the way to Sunday to spend with family and friends. So really nice time. Some time off as well. That it's always much appreciated. Thank you for asking it, Andrew. Great. So,
Awesome.
Andrew, you are senior director of finance and Kentik, right, at San Francisco. But you started your background in accounting. I don't know if you could share a little bit. Where did you start your journey? If you want to go all the way to till college, till the beginning, feel free to do so.
Yeah, how much time do you have? Just kidding. Well, yeah, I'd like to, I guess I can start back to sort of how I got into accounting. And, you know, I was always trying to figure out what I was good at. And I think math was one of those things at an early age. And I wasn't always the best at it, but when I struggled with it, I just remember my dad saying, math follows rules. And that sort of made me confident that I could figure it out. And so, I always was pretty top of the class in terms of math. And then when I got to college, I spoke with a few professors, and the accounting professors were very eager to kind of pull me in because I wasn't sure in business school which direction to go to. There's finance and marketing and all kinds of sorts of flavors of business that you could do. And so accounting kind of you know people said that if you know accounting, it's going to open up a lot of doors for you. And I think Warren Buffett and Mark Cuban would agree as well that it's sort of the building blocks of finance, and then you can build off of that. And so I did go sort of a traditional route where back when I was going to school, there were a lot of recruitment for public accounting, and so all the major firms were there. And I think that was a great way to get my feet wet in business, and worked for about 5 years overall in public accounting. A couple of those years just in different industries, restaurants and software manufacturing, and then the back half at a more venture backed company.
Yeah.
Audits of venture backed companies, and that's where I really got interested in private industry, and especially the tech space. So I like to say that I got into tech sort of before it was cool and everybody was doing it in Silicon Valley.
Which, which year is that?
Now, if you say you work for tech, everyone's like, yeah, you and everybody else, right?
Which year do you
Um,
think that it was that frontier when it
yeah,
was
that's a good
still
question.
cool?
So before the financial, the 2008, the crisis, I would say, sort of that era, I
Yeah,
would say. Yeah, things were changing. I think we didn't have iPhones yet, so it was crazy times.
and now it's not cool anymore.
I guess, or you just find more people are especially in Silicon Valley are in the space, right? But so Kentik is my third startup. So I've been at mostly Series B, Series C, and a little bit beyond companies, but it already has a product market fit and revenues, and looking to gain more customers, gain more revenue, and kind of where I was brought in, and I think a lot of where I brought value was bringing companies through their first audits, which can be kind of difficult.
Yeah,
So getting controls in place, making sure the books were closed, and those kind of things. And so that's where I think, I was able to help kind of be the right hand man for CFOs at a couple different companies.
that's
And
awesome.
so, yeah, Kentik is my first SaaS company. And so I've really been interested in that, just learning all the lingo. It's almost a different. It has its own language, with the metrics that SaaS companies follow, and the recurring revenue is just a great thing. And so, I haven't looked back, but Kentik's been an interesting journey, and I've been there now 6 years, and I know that just the fact that my daughter was born like the week that I started at Kentik, so I'm always going to know how old she is and how many years I've been at Kentik.
That's great. What does Kentik exactly do?
Yeah, good question. So we're in the network observability space, and the way I like to explain it to family and friends is, if you've got a problem somewhere in your body, you're trying to figure out what that is. So you might get an MRI to figure that out, and so Kentik is sort of the MRI for your network. So if you have like a latency issue or you're being attacked, Kentik can help you figure out where that's coming from and be able to
Mhm.
fix it.
That's great. So always working with other companies, B2B.
It is, yeah. So we're B2B. That's
Perfect.
right.
And I guess now, Andrew, yeah, you're probably going through the budgeting season. How is
Yes, we are.
how is it going this year? Any big changes?
Yeah, so I think we're doing a lot of scenario modeling, probably more than we have in the past, and showing more realistic scenarios, I think. So
Mhm.
just, what do things look like with 20% year over year growth versus 30%? And a lot of that is important because that dictates sort of what we can spend and what makes sense. And I think a lot of companies really stepped on the gas a lot post
Mhm.
pandemic and kind of spent quite a bit, but you have to sort of make sure that you're watching what you can support. And so for us it's important to just know kind of how much we're gonna how much acceleration we have, and be able to dial back levers if we need to, or accelerate if we need to.
Yeah. And in this scenario modeling, what are kind of the key drivers that you focus from one scenario to other scenarios? Is it just grow, or is it as well cut expense?
Yeah, good question. So I think we try to forecast our mix of like where our revenue is going to come from. So there's a lot of slicing and dicing by region, but just sort of an assumption of like where is the revenue going to come from? Is it new customers or is it existing customers? Fortunately for Kentik, we have a really sticky product, and so a lot of that helps drive positive results for us.
Uh-huh.
And so, understanding the mix of customers and the industries that they're coming from is important.
Yeah. And then more related with the expense side, is there also any strategy you follow in there? Because definitely there's been, from what I heard from other finance leaders, so much cutting in there, or at least trying to reduce the contracts to the minimum, renegotiate everything.
Yeah, you brought up something near and dear to my heart. So yeah, I'm pretty involved in some of that expense management across the company. I'd say, a lot of the bulk of our expenses is obviously people costs, and that's a tough one because, you're what you pay in salary and bonuses, you're not going to cut necessarily there because it's what the market rates are.
Yeah.
Um, but all other spend, right? So going back to the payroll costs, if you're hitting your ARR targets, you can hire more and you can dial things up and down that way. But kind of the other spend, we do have quite a bit of software tools across the company. And so I've been sort of taking the reins as far as negotiating a lot of our contracts, like coming up with procurement processes where we've implemented some tools. We implemented NetSuite for our ERP and Zip for procurement, and that's been helping us kind of get more visibility into our expenses. And so basically, we're just asking more questions like, "Hey, we want to support you. You need to buy this, but kind of why? What's the ROI?" And also, just what's fun for me is just once we've identified a tool or something that we want to get, just trying to get a good price for it, right? And so using some strategies to, especially like when you're when you're negotiating a first contract is really where you want to negotiate well because it sets you up kind of for future renewals. And so if you're kind of paying a high price in the beginning, you're also pay a high price going forward. And so securing some of those discounts, maybe doing like a renewal cap, negotiating some kind of volume tier discounting is important.
What are those strategies that you
I can't
mentioned?
share
What?
all of them with you, but no, I think there's one thing is just tracking all this stuff. Like I built a spreadsheet essentially for the company that had most of our tool spend in one place and just kind of when it renewed and how much we're paying. And so, getting in front of the vendor a couple months before that renewal period and just having a conversation with them is huge.
Yeah.
The fact that they know that there's alternatives out there and that you might be considering those alternatives, like that can be a strategy. Also, if as we're growing, it was also easy to get some discounting because everybody loves to sell you more stuff, so you'll get a better discount if you buy more.
Yeah. I'm curious, Andrew. For example, if you have another opportunity as a vendor, right, where it's easy to switch, maybe like negotiating can be, let's say, easier, or you can feel more powerful. But how do you approach this type of negotiation when the provider, when the vendor is very strategic and you know that it's going to be very hard for you to switch to one from one provider to another one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think certain vendors know that there aren't that many games in town. Like certain key systems where it's just going to be a nightmare for you to switch from NetSuite to something else, and so they kind of know that they have a monopoly and they're not so motivated to give you deals. I think with other ones, um, if it's a key player, I'm usually more involved in that day to day or just having more conversations with that vendor. And so I think I focus more on the positive relationship. So I'm not trying to threaten them and say, we're going to maybe pull the plug and go with somebody else, but just sort of like, hey, we want to grow with you. Like these are the features that are important to us. And maybe if we don't get the best price, we get features that we want or things that are going to help us succeed in our jobs.
That's good point. Appreciate it, Andrew. You mentioned that you just switched to NetSuite, probably coming from a smaller system, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, and in previous startups, I've used QuickBooks, and QuickBooks online, and it's actually come quite a long way. Like it's pretty amazing how you can scale a company on QuickBooks for so long, and I think it's a good system for as long as you can support it. But for in our case, we're just growing at the level that it made sense to get something a little more robust, with better reporting. And a lot of what I've heard too is just, even if you're kind of at the cusp, you might want to do the implementation sooner than later, because once you start exceeding certain numbers, it can become a more challenging task.
When do you think it's like a good moment for companies to switch, let's say, from QuickBooks or this type of accounting systems into something larger like NetSuite, Sage?
Yeah, totally. I think it also depends on sort of your model, because if you have like Kentik, we have less contracts but higher dollar value. You can sort of get away with QuickBooks potentially a little bit longer. But if you start to have a lot of volume, that could be like a lower revenue number. But I would say, you can probably get away with being on QuickBooks even close to 50 million in ARR, and then once you're past that point, definitely you should be looking at something else. And then there's probably a range between like 10 and 50 million that you might want to go sooner to NetSuite if you can, if you think the growth's going to be there.
What was it for you, like the tipping point where you say, okay, we cannot live in QBO anymore. We need something bigger.
Yep. Well, two things. One is, we expanded internationally. So having a subsidiary is very difficult to deal with in QuickBooks. Um, so that was definitely a key trigger for us. Um, and then yeah, I'm trying to think back. So we've for the life of us tried to find a billing system that kind of sat on top of QuickBooks that would be able to do our invoicing, and we really couldn't find it. Like we were using bill.com, which is more geared for AP, but we were using that to send out our invoices. And what we found was we really couldn't find something that was cheap enough to kind of use in tandem with QuickBooks. Like it just made sense to go to the next level and get NetSuite. And so we did have this point for probably a year or two where we're like, it's not time for NetSuite, but we couldn't kind of find that tool that was just going to help us with billing and rev rec,
Yeah.
that made sense price wise and implementing. So we kind of decided to actually go to NetSuite probably a little earlier than we needed to, but it just solved a lot of pain points for us.
Nice. Has it been a good transition from one to the other?
Yeah, definitely something, a different system is always, there needs to be training, and we're probably underutilizing some of the power under the hood. It's sort of like we went from kind of a sedan to like a more of a sports car. And so, we have some of those nice features, but we're not using all of them. But yeah, definitely was a good move. And looking back, it was worth sort of the cycles that we had to implement and get it in place. And there's definitely more room that we can grow in it right now. Um, one of the things that we're trying to add is sort of automating our dunning. And we have an AR person who's really strong, who's very good at sending out invoices and kind of collections. But we know we can automate quite a bit of that and free her up to do some other things. So that's sort of one thing on our roadmap. And another thing is just reporting. NetSuite just has so much more power than QuickBooks to tag data and be able to kind of report on it to the various business segments. So that's definitely another thing that we're looking to do in the near
Yeah.
future.
Kind of the slice and dice of the data, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. How many weeks did it take? If you wanna. if you
I
want to share.
know weeks. I think it's more like months, but I think we had it implemented fairly well within 5 6 months. But there's always like the little things that you still need to tweak, getting numbers over and old transactions to match. That did take some time. So definitely not something that's going to take 2 or 3 months. So you just have to plan that it's going to take a little longer than that when you're doing it.
Nice. And I wanted to ask you, Andrew, how do you see the future of finance departments basically related with AI? Do you think it's going to have a huge impact? What are your thoughts in there?
Yeah, I hope so. I think so. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I know that finance folks are probably dying to have automated. That we see some of it now with kind of the OCR and Expensify, where you upload a document and it pulls out the relevant data for you. Um, Another thing that I'm seeing companies do now a lot on the legal side is reviewing documents. So I work with sales quite a bit, and there's always like negotiations on contracts. And so I think AI can do a lot there, where it sort of points you to the main points that are generally negotiated between two companies, and
Mhm.
just lowering the time it takes to go through those is definitely something AI can help with. I think we've been leveraging tools, which I think is sort of like a form of AI, but there's certain tasks that I think recording journal entries maybe automatically, that's already out there. Closing the books. I'm not saying that you can close the books completely automatically, but that's certainly something that I think in the near future can get a lot more automated.
Yeah. So do you think that's the headcount for finance in the next 5 years or 10 years for the same company? It's going to be same number of people working in the department, less, maybe even more. It's going to become more like a business partner of the company itself.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm very used to operating with a lean team, so I can't imagine you know getting kind of extra headcount. I think if anything, that would probably consolidate some of the work. There may be some person that has to manage some of the automations that happen, like whether it's IT or security. So that there may be a role there. Maybe someone who's optimizing the AI across tools. But I think for finance, I see it more as consolidating some of the work and just making it easier, and freeing the team up to do more value added things.
Great. Awesome. Andrew, we're going to wrap it up in here. Thank you very much for joining us today in the poll. I appreciated a lot being having in here with you. So thank you very
Same
much.
here. Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me.